Section 1. What is dopamine? Dopamine is a chemical in our brains. It's a neurotransmitter. This means it sends messages between brain cells. These messages are crucial for our daily functioning. These messages are really important. They help regulate many of our bodily functions and emotional responses. They control how we feel and what we do. For instance, dopamine plays a key role in our mood, making us feel happy or sad. Dopamine is like a reward system. It helps reinforce behaviors that are beneficial to us. When something good happens, our brains release dopamine. This release is what gives us a sense of pleasure and satisfaction. This makes us feel happy. It's the brain's way of rewarding us for positive actions. It also motivates us to repeat the behavior that made us feel good. This is why we often seek out activities that make us feel happy. Dopamine is essential for many brain functions. It influences our ability to think, plan, and solve problems. These include movement, memory, attention, and learning. Without dopamine, these critical functions would be impaired. Without dopamine, our brains wouldn't work properly. It is vital for our overall well-being and mental health. Understanding dopamine helps us appreciate how our brains work and why we feel the way we do. It's a small molecule with a big impact.
Section 2. The feeling of happiness. Happiness is a universal emotion that everyone experiences in different ways. It can be triggered by simple pleasures or significant achievements. Dopamine plays a big role in how we experience pleasure. This neurotransmitter is often referred to as the feel-good chemical of the brain. When we do something enjoyable, our brains release dopamine. This release is what makes us feel pleasure and joy. This creates a feeling of happiness and satisfaction. It's a natural reward system that encourages us to repeat behaviors that are beneficial for us. Think about eating your favorite food. It tastes good, right? That delicious taste is not just about the food itself. That's because your brain is releasing dopamine. This chemical reaction is what makes the experience so enjoyable. The dopamine tells your brain that this is a pleasurable experience. It reinforces the behavior, making you want to do it again. Other activities also release dopamine. It's not just about food. Many other experiences can trigger this chemical. These include listening to music, which can elevate your mood and make you feel more connected to the world around you. Spending time with loved ones and achieving a goal also release dopamine. These activities strengthen our social bonds and give us a sense of accomplishment. All of these things make us feel good because of dopamine. It's the brain's way of rewarding us for engaging in activities that are essential for our well-being and happiness.
Section 3. Why you want things. Dopamine is also responsible for motivation. It drives us to seek out rewards and pleasurable experiences. Imagine you're thirsty. You see a glass of water. Your brain knows that drinking water will quench your thirst. This knowledge triggers the release of dopamine.
The dopamine motivates you to reach for the glass and take a drink. This is how dopamine helps us stay alive. It pushes us to get the things we need.
Section 4. Dopamine pathways in the brain. Dopamine travels through specific pathways in the brain. These pathways connect different brain regions. One important pathway is the mesolimbic pathway. It's also called the reward pathway. This pathway starts in the middle of the brain. It then goes to areas involved in emotion and decision-making. When we experience something rewarding, the mesolimbic pathway is activated. This leads to the release of dopamine. The dopamine signals to the brain that something important has happened.
Section 5. Dopamine throughout the body. Dopamine isn't just found in the brain. It also acts as a hormone in the body. Hormones are chemical messengers that travel through the bloodstream. As a hormone, dopamine has different effects on different organs. For example, it helps regulate heart rate and blood pressure. It also plays a role in digestion and kidney function. In short, dopamine is a busy chemical. It works both in the brain and the body to keep us healthy and functioning properly.
Section 6. Dopamine and learning. Dopamine is crucial for learning. It acts as a neurotransmitter, sending signals in the brain. It helps us remember information and repeat behaviors that lead to rewards. When we achieve something, dopamine is released, making us feel good. When we learn something new, our brains release dopamine. This release is a signal that encourages us to continue learning. This dopamine strengthens the connections between neurons. These connections, known as synapses, become more efficient. These connections are what allow us to store and recall memories. The stronger the connections, the better we remember. Think about riding a bike. At first, it's hard. You have to focus on balancing, pedaling, and steering all at once. You might fall a lot. Each fall is a learning experience, and your brain is working hard to improve. But with practice, you get better. Your brain releases dopamine each time you practice, reinforcing the correct movements. This is because your brain is releasing dopamine as you learn. The more you practice, the more dopamine is released. The dopamine helps you remember the movements needed to ride the bike. Over time, these movements become second nature thanks to the power of dopamine.
Section 7. Understanding dopamine. A key to ourselves. Dopamine is a complex chemical with many important roles. It affects our mood, motivation, and ability to learn. It even influences our physical health. By understanding dopamine, we can better understand ourselves. We can learn why we feel the way we do. We can also find ways to improve our mental and physical well-being. So next time you feel happy, motivated, or satisfied, remember dopamine. It's the amazing chemical that makes it all possible.